everybody. Welcome to The Hash. It's Thursday. We're feeling good. We're feeling lively. People are all over the place. We're having a good time. We're here to get you going on crypto, culture, and more. I'm Zach Seward. Naomi Brockwell's here. We got Will Foxley. We got Jen Sanasi. Gang's all here. Naomi's going to lead us off today with some privacy news out of the UK.
Yeah, to get these good times rolling, let's talk about what a disaster the UK government is. So the UK government apparently is set to launch a giant publicity campaign attacking end-to-end encryption. Their main objective is to sway public opinion against Facebook's decision to end-to-end encrypt its Messenger app. They're, of course, using children as the vehicle for swaying public opinion. They've hired M&C Saatchi Advertising Agency. They're doing all kinds of stunts, some of which are shockingly manipulative, basically to tell a very one-sided story. And that story is how end-to-end encryption cannot be allowed because privacy will somehow enable more attacks on children. There's so much to dig into here. I mean, this makes me so angry. It's absolutely not uncommon. I mean, it's through advertising campaigns that the governments get through a lot of their policies. A lot of people don't even realize this. I mean, the Federal Reserve itself was first instituted because preceding it was a giant advertising campaign where you had all of these banking cartels taking out giant full-page ads in coordinated releases across the country in hundreds of publications. This is what happens. So now the UK is taking a leaf out of that book. They're saying, well, we don't want private messaging. We want everyone's messages to be insecure because somehow that helps children. So let's dive into this. Will, I'm going to throw this to you to start off with. What were your thoughts about all of this?
I thought Boris looked pretty funny in that photo. So great choice from the editor there.
Yeah.
Off the top, though, totally agree with you. End-to-end encryption should be just the standard practice, and a lot of these firms are using end-to-end encryption. And there's also been a lot of backlash when firms have chosen not to use it or have even walked back their end-to-end encryption. Remember, I think about a year ago, WhatsApp decided to kind of change the way that they were encrypting messages, and a lot of people, especially in crypto, got pretty pissed off at Facebook and deleted the app and left the whole ecosystem. Of course, that doesn't mean that we're going to see that happen in practicality across all these different firms, especially when the government gets involved and they choose what you can do. And if you don't listen to them, guess what happens? Well, you go to jail. That's why the Telegram founder, he doesn't live in Russia. He lives in Dubai, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of the reason why he's there is because he doesn't want to deal with the Russian government, which has been after him for the launch of Telegram. We've seen Germany is going after Telegram more recently, and it's just going to keep happening. Messaging is information. That information has value, and governments are going to go after all this value where they can. That's why Bitcoin matters. That's why privacy tech matters. That's why end-to-end encryption matters. And I think, Naomi, I'm pretty bearish on this whole subject. I think we're going to see a lot more pain points and pressure going forward before things get better. But Jen, I want to throw this to you and kind of get your take on it.
Yeah, my first thought was, I wonder how this is going to affect the advertising agency's business. You know, I would assume that the more privacy-focused clients would see the story and maybe take their business elsewhere. Naomi, Will, I completely agree with you. I want to read a quote from the story. So this was from a Home Office spokesperson. He said, "We have engaged M&C Saatchi to bring together the many organizations who share our concerns about the impact end-to-end encryption would have on our ability to keep children safe." And this quote is accompanied, I know, Naomi, you didn't really explain what the campaign was, and I'll let you tell us more about it in a second. But they talk about this glass box where there are two actors in the box, a parent and a child. And then the glass box just slowly goes black. That's quite dramatic and quite a message that they're sending to the public. And the story also mentioned that there are privacy groups that are launching a counter campaign, which I think is so important to this story. It's so shocking to me how many people will watch ads like this and just take the word as gospel. And so it's really important for these privacy groups to launch their campaigns. And I hope that they're effective and they drive people to find more information and really understand why end-to-end encryption is so important. But Naomi, I'll pass it back up to you.
Yeah, just on your comment about what this campaign is. So it's a giant multi-pronged approach. It isn't just the physical installations at like shopping malls and things like that, where you have this glass box that Jen mentioned. So the opening phase of this campaign, which is expected to launch within a few days, apparently, according to this leaked presentation that Rolling Stone got hold of, the whole point of this is to make things appear to be the result of grassroots action, children's charities. They're downplaying any government role. Like, they're being really insidious with how they're doing this. They're just making it seem like, well, a group of us really, children-loving people who want to protect the world are getting together in this grassroots movement. And it's not that at all. It is a government-funded, which means taxpayer-funded approach, where the government is using your money to try to convince you to be less secure in your communication. You're funding this, right? So, I mean, it's just crazy. So the presentation itself says, we're going to urge social media companies to put children's safety first. We're going to get a bunch of children's charities and stakeholders to come together. It's a really comprehensive plan, and they've really targeted the psychology of people. Like, what's going to mobilize them the best? Well, you want to see people from these actual charities. You want to make it seem like they took up the initiative to create this campaign. I've said it before, it's really insidious, but Will, I'll throw it back to you.
Well, I want to get Zach's opinion on this, because I might be mistaken here, but you're kind of the demographic something like this would be going after, right? Someone who's would be, perhaps these ads would be targeted for. So how would you kind of take this information?
Well, on that
like
note,
ODB
Will,
once said,
Zach,
we're for the children.
So I just want to mention, sorry.
Go for it.
I just want to say, just on that note, because I want Zach's opinion too, they mentioned in the article, most people don't know what end-to-end encryption is. And so they're easily susceptible. And so if they're just given this very dramatic campaign that talks about children dying, they're obviously going to be swayed. Zach, as our resident non-end-to-end encrypted user, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I always like to step this one back, and I think you're right? Like, people hear end-to-end encryption and it's kind of scary, and crypt is in there. It's a kind of scary word, but I think there's a humanist case for why these services matter, right? Like, it's important to remember that before the internet, you could converse with someone, and that wouldn't be logged, recorded for posterity, for people to lurk on and mine for data or other insights and intelligence. Back in the old days, you could talk, you could transfer funds, you could do things that would happen ephemerally, and they wouldn't be recorded and spied on and snooped on. And that's why some of these messaging apps are a really beautiful thing, because they sort of recreate in a digital, highly surveilled world that human-first space in which you can communicate with privacy, with trust, and you can establish relations in a way that is akin to the olden days, before the time of digital surveillance. So I think when we talk about encryption apps, end-to-end encryption, be it Signal, be it whatever, it's important to kind of remember what it's all about. And it's the stuff that very much animated early cypherpunks too, right? Money moving to the online world is going to face the same challenges as information moving to the online world has already faced. So when we're talking about sort of what Bitcoin and encryption and all these technologies are really about, it's couched in technology, but really there's a human core to what this stuff is all about. So I think as we talk about some of this messaging activity around why end-to-end encryption is bad, it's just always good to kind of step back and be like, okay, here's the humanist case for why private messaging platforms should be protected. And that's all I got.
That's really well said. I will encourage.
Clip that. Throw
Sorry,
it on
go
YouTube.
ahead, Will.
That was great.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, folks.
I will, as final
Appreciate
statements,
you.
encourage everyone to download Signal. It is end-to-end encrypted. It is the most secure messaging app out there, and they don't collect all this metadata that supposedly end-to-end encrypted chats like WhatsApp and Telegram and all of these places do. So Telegram doesn't collect the metadata, but most of their conversations are actually not even end-to-end encrypted. Something to keep in mind. But Will, I will throw it to you for the next story. No, Zach. Zach, next story. Oh, wait, Will, comment.
I'm not the next story. And I have no more comments as it happens either. So
that's great.
We'll just go to the next story.
Then.
Well, I have to tell you before we go to Zach.
I'll run with it.
Your hair looks amazing today.
Your dramatic forelock.
Not really working with me.
It's amazing.
It's really humid here. Denver's so dry. My hair doesn't know what to do. It's freaking out. Let's go to the
All
next
right,
story.
we'll do hair tips.
Let's not
We'll
dwell
do
on my
hair tips on another show. We'll do hair tips on another show. All right, we're back. Next story. Dan Larimer's back, baby. EOS creator, Block One, CTO. One time he left, he's gone, he peaced out. He is back with this community-led effort to breathe some life into the EOS blockchain project. And also, EOS might get a rebrand. There's talk here that EOS and some of the assets that are associated with Block One, which famously raised $4 billion in an ICO to build the software that powered the EOS blockchain. Some of those assets, some of that IP is still associated with Block One, and the community is not in control of them. So there's talk in this article that Danny Nelson capably reported this morning of a rebrand for this entire thing and a fork that Dan Larimer, who is a repeat entrepreneur in the blockchain space and someone who is held in high regard by the EOS community. He is back in the fold after disappearing from the scene for a bit. And this is kind of interesting to see how this is all shaking out. This has been kind of a quiet civil war brewing in EOS land for some time. And it's always fun to note on those things. So I'm going to throw it straight to Will because he's chuckling and his hair does still look amazing. Will, what are your thoughts on this EOS story?
It's helpless. It won't help me out. No, takeaways. First of all, don't call it a comeback. Dan Larimer has always been the man, and he will continue to be the man. This EOS thing has been dragging out for years. They basically became like this Bitcoin ETF that you could buy using a token of some sort, just because they had so much Bitcoin in the bank and they weren't developing anything. No one cared about the EOS token. Didn't matter at all. And then somehow the SPAC idea got involved where Block One, which was developing the software project for EOS, decided to go public in a merger and become an exchange called Bullish. And now we see Dan Larimer is coming back. He's like the white knight riding to the EOS community, going to fix everything that has gone array over the last few years and bring EOS back into the conversation. This is the token, mind you, that was centerfold in Times Square with a huge banner billboard, much like we see Solana or Avalanche nowadays. It's time for a comeback. It's time for their Messiah to come back into the situation. And I'm pretty excited to see what this man can unveil. You throw it to Jen, though, for your take.
I just have a question for you. Can he breathe life back into this project, do you think? Like, do you think maybe too many things have gone wrong?
I don't know if mortals like Zach and I can really predict what Dan Larimer is going to do in this situation, but I do have high hopes that he can bring this project back from the brink. I still don't know what EOS is really going to do. Like, it doesn't quite make sense. Like, its purpose was to have some sort of different consensus mechanism than Bitcoin or Ethereum, where there was proof of stake, but not proof of stake. It had some delegation aspects to it. It's supposed to be very eco-friendly. You're supposed to be able to program it a little bit more, kind of like Ethereum. That never came about. Everyone who was early in it got a ton of money and then didn't really have incentives to build anything. And then we saw Block One kind of came around. That project started building things like Voice, which never really launched and went mainstream. It's supposed to be some sort of social media application built on top of the EOS platform. Doesn't really exist to my knowledge. And then earlier this year, they also tried to get into the NFT game. Don't really know if that panned out. So yes, I have a lot of questions, but it's also Dan the Man, so who knows? I'm going to throw it up to Naomi.
It's interesting. I mean, Voice did launch. I don't think it was ever public. I think it was kind of beta and invites, but I think that everyone was accepted who actually requested an invitation. It's like blogging on there. I think the main issue was, honestly, the SEC. The SEC went after EOS in the early days, and after that moment, you just try getting an interview or getting any words from anyone who's part of Block One. They were so tight-lipped. I tried for years to get any sort of comment from the people in charge of Block One. So whether it was Dan or whether it's Brendan Bloomer, and they wouldn't talk to anyone because they were so afraid that their company would get more than just a slap on the wrist, which is what they got when the SEC, like they were one of the first companies that the SEC went after who had an ICO, and they ended up saying like, okay, well, here's a slap on the wrist and we'll settle. And I think that they were terrified of them just going after them, and they wouldn't say anything publicly, and they didn't want to be seen as being in control of the EOS network, which meant that they couldn't really spearhead projects and get things mobilized. And so everything just kind of disintegrated. So you end up with this foundation that has a ton of money and all these resources, and they raised it to really pour it into this ecosystem. And they ended up just, sitting back and trying to not get attention. And that's just not the way to mobilize a network. We need to be coming out in front of the regulators. We need to be getting this stuff going. It's absolutely harder for regulators to shut this stuff down if it's already in the works. We can see that in a lot of decentralized apps out there. You see it in Ethereum. It's difficult for the government to go after them, even if they were to try to go after the Ethereum Foundation right now. That's great. Ethereum is this whole other beast controlled by all of these other people by this stage. EOS never really got there because in the early days they were just kind of thwarted. So I think that's a big lesson of how much government can get in the way of a new idea thriving. I agree with Will. I think Dan is a really interesting guy. He's this serial entrepreneur who's part of BitShares, he's part of Steemit. He then went on to EOS. A lot of people give him flack because they're like, oh, you just do one project, go on to the next. It's like, right. He does one successful project and then iterates on it as what he's learned, makes a better project, goes on to the next, makes it even if you actually use these platforms, you could see this iterative process and how it's developed and how his ideas have developed. So I'm very interested to see what Dan comes up with next. Whether it's with this Mandel upgrade, whether it's the other decentralized social media that he was hinting at working on. I think that he's a very interesting guy, but I will throw it to you, Zach, to wrap up and take us to break.
All right, let's take a break. We're going to go to NFT land after this. There's a growing roster of sports-related NFTs in the Dapper Labs family, and now they have the fighting. UFC NFTs have launched. We'll talk about it, and we'll also fight after the break, physically, with punches.
Physically fight, right here
mixed martial
on the
arts.
We're going to punch some things.
Ooh.
When we say we want to reimagine money, it turns out we're going to the heart of the matter. Imagination has always been a key part of what money is. Imagination, in the form of cultural creativity, is also something that the cryptocurrency community has in spades. And to the outsider, that can be a reason to dismiss it as frivolous, as something built on nothing. To dismiss it for these reasons, though, is to ignore that all money is imagined.
Hello and welcome back to The Hash. Before I get into the next story, I'm just going to say that Naomi and I are average height. Will is spreading false news.
Fact check.
Thank you, Jen, for setting the record straight.
I got you. All right. Crypto.com CEO Chris Marszalek has acknowledged that 400 accounts were hacked in a security breach earlier this week. After detecting the breaches, withdrawals were paused for something like 14 hours to fix the issue, and the exchange reimbursed all affected customers. So we can dig a little bit more into the details, but Naomi, I wanted to pass this off to you for your first thoughts.
Hacks, they happen all the time and you need to be really careful. I mean, crypto.com to their, what's the word I don't know what word I'm looking for, to their, Crypto.com has agreed to reimburse to their credit. Got it. Nice. Crypto.com to their credit has agreed to reimburse everyone, so they are covering this. It's the same thing that a lot of these larger hacks, larger exchanges do whenever there's a hack. So we saw that with Binance. They created the Seifu Fund, which is just such an awesome name for a fund. Crypto.com is also reimbursing, but it also should give people an idea of why they need to be really careful with their crypto. Maybe storing it on an exchange is not the safest thing that you could be doing. Maybe storing it yourself isn't the safest thing either. It really depends on your propensity to be able to secure your own assets. Sometimes using a third party makes sense, but there are a lot better third parties than storing it in the exchange. There are lots of vaults out there. There are a lot of multi-sig options that actually make it super easy to kind of delegate partial ownership of things so that you actually need like this two-factor authentication type thing when accessing your funds. I would encourage people to look into those, because if they think that it's just a choice between storing it myself and being really scared and all the responsibility on me and putting it in exchange, they're absolutely not the only two options out there. But Will, I'll throw it to you for your thoughts. Actually, Zach, I'll throw it to you because your hand's up.
I'll take it. All I want to know is if the hackers saw the Matt Damon commercial and they're like, we are hacking crypto.com. This commercial must end. That's all I want to know about this story. Exchange hacks, they happen all the time. I just want to know how it relates to the Matt Damon commercial that has been everywhere in the last few weeks. That's all I want to know. So if anybody knows anything about that, you let me know. We'll protect your anonymity. If you're the hacker who saw the commercial and then got mad, just let me know, okay? Let me know.
There's going to be that anonymous commercial with the guy and the mask on and be like, we hacked crypto.com because their commercial was super annoying. And then you'll find out.
Absolutely.
No, takeaway from this, though, kind of looking at crypto.com, and we talked about this yesterday, was they just signed that huge deal with the prior Staples Center, right? And now they just got hacked and they had all this marketing buzz around. It's funny how like you can really get ahead of yourself almost, and then just stuff happens. Like, not saying crypto.com is a bad product or whatnot. They're huge for a reason, but you can put all this money into marketing and then shit just happens. And before like your entire audience, you get mud in your face, and it takes so long to kind of get yourself back to that gold standard. I think, again, this is something why Coinbase has done so well in the past, because it hasn't really suffered these major breaches. There has been instances where they've lost funds and they've made people whole, or they've lost some data for people, but nothing really on this scale to my knowledge. So it's fascinating to see how you have to keep running ahead of everybody else, and you have to be like very careful with your marketing campaigns as well, because this was not great timing, all things considered. Jen, I want to get your take on this.
There it is. Look at that ad.
Yeah,
it's playing, guys.
It's crazy.
It's good.
I was just going to say, from a PR perspective, I don't think that this is that bad, because they're so focused on that message that all the customers were reimbursed. And I think a lot of people who are afraid to get into crypto will see that and think of it like their bank or their credit card, right? If I lose money from someone stealing my credit card, I know my credit card company is going to give that back to me. And I feel like people who are afraid to get into the crypto space or afraid of losing their money might read a story like this and think, oh, I'll go with this exchange because they're going to reimburse my funds. So that spin on it was kind of interesting to me, but I'll let you two fight out for who's going to take it from me.
All right, Zach,
Control says I was first, Naomi. I won.
Yeah, whatever. We said they'd be punching.
Whatever. Man, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, no. Yeah, it's funny because, I think, no, Jen, that's a really good point, because the ad tagline is like, fortune favors the brave or something, right? In this instance, it didn't necessarily work out that way, but if this were to be like a DeFi hack or like in a decentralized exchange where you don't have these middlemen, you don't have this middle layer that intermediates your relationship to the blockchain, there is no recourse for like you get rugged because you went on like, I don't know, some weird DeFi project. There's no sort of like recourse for some of those users. So I think it is interesting to like, if that's like, sort of like the second layer step for how people start thinking about this, if they get there, that's potentially really interesting. And I don't know what that means for the future of decentralized exchanges, but it certainly presents these trade-offs that exist in this market especially when you're first entering it. So it's interesting to think about that second step. But I will pass it to Naomi.
Yeah, I'll take that. So I want to go back to the moral hazard that Jen was talking about, because she mentioned how if you're a credit card user, you can be fine with leaving your credit card at the store. And if someone steals it, you're like, the bank's going to reimburse me all my money. So there is this moral hazard where people don't take care of their funds like they should. And what that ends up creating is a whole bunch of fees. Like, all of those costs do get passed on to the consumer, and we shouldn't forget that. The issue is that all of the costs are kind of dispersed, and the benefits are really concentrated. So in this situation, if you have an account that has $30,000 in it and you get all of that money reimbursed, you're like, yeah, this is great. I'm totally fine with paying increased fees. It's sort of like an insurance policy. So if you're someone who thinks that, you're not going to be that great with your password, maybe it's a good idea to use one of these exchanges where those costs are dispersed across all users. But if you're super careful and, you could protect this stuff yourself, you probably should, because those costs are being passed along to you from all of the people who are less careful with their password and login and computer security hygiene and all of that. So just something to keep in mind, like these costs, it's not just like, oh, we have this endless treasure trove of money to reimburse people. That treasure trove trove of money comes from all of the fees that they're collecting. And if that supply runs down because there are too many hacks or whatnot, then, definitely you're going to see that reverberate throughout the entire exchange ecosystem. But I will throw it to, I think, Will, you have the next story.
I do. The UFC is going NFT, just like NBA and the NFL before it, with Dapper Labs, which is rolling out a new deck of NFT cards for the Ultimate Fighting Championship ring here. Pretty brutal. Look at that photo, getting punched in the head, and you can have a nice photo of that.
I picked that photo. That was me. I did that.
Great photo choice. If you really are into the UFC and you want to own a piece of memorabilia of another man being pummeled or woman being pummeled into the ring, you can own that now as on your phone. You can pull that up whenever you want. You just get out some energy. Think about someone having their nose broken right there on your phone. It's good stuff. Zach, going to throw this down to you. Dapper Labs, a lot of their products, they came out of the gate really fast in January, did very well, especially NBA Top Shot. Saw some of those cards trading to the millions of dollars. And it kind of died off. Volume went away. All the volume went to these profile picture tokens and NFT projects like the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Can they kind of come back with these integrations we're seeing with the NFL, NBA, UFC?
I think it's smart. I mean, these NFT things are like necessarily faddish, right? And I think a lot of games are like also necessarily faddish. So if you're able to like add a continuing like Rolodex of exciting and big brand name partners, I think that probably makes a lot of sense for that business model, right? Like, necessarily things are going to peak and then there's going to tail off. And hopefully there's like a useful plateau on that tail. In other instances, it's just going to be way down there. So it makes sense that they would be like, rolling out as many of these partnerships as possible while their brand is still held in high regard. And I think, some people really love UFC. There's a ton of people who watch it, pay-per-view, they buy it. It's a big event. It's a global thing. So the fact that they're sort of rolling out with this, this community of fans makes a ton of sense as they look to, again, bring more and more activity through NFTs to the Flow blockchain itself. So, MMA, not necessarily my thing, but it makes sense that if you're trying to activate a particular fan community around fightings, pictures, videos of people fighting. So yeah, I'm into it. Yeah.
Cool. Jen,
do you guys want to fight? Do you guys want to do video fight? Can we do fighting videos again? That was so fun.
Let's do it. We can just do it right now. Someone make this an NFT.
All right. This is the old man fisticuffs.
Just throw a punch.
All right, cool. Anybody got anything to say?
Yeah,
Control's like this sucks.
Can you guys please just say something useful? I was going to say the same thing as you, Zach. I mean, UFC fans are really, really, what's the word? Not culty,
violent.
But they're real. Like they really love violence. They form these communities around watching that pay-per-view event, right? It's this very ritualistic thing that happens with the UFC. So I think these NFTs are just really natural. I think their community is going to love them. Will they make as much money and get those headlines that we saw with Top Shot at the beginning of last year? I don't know, but I think it will be a great collector's item for UFC fans, and they will gladly pull them up on their phone and share them with their friends to get ready for those pay-per-views. But Naomi, I'll pass it up to you for the last thought.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, Jen. I actually have some friends who invite me over for every single UFC fight that goes on. They love it. It's this ritual. And I don't think I have gone once. Ever. I think I've been to their house like once, like maybe a few hours prior, and then made sure that I left before the fight started. But it really is like this ritual. And it's interesting to see how far blockchain technology has come, in that in the early days, almost every single thing that I saw blockchain being used for, I was like, great, that's my demographic. Like it was all kind of this wheelhouse of like privacy and financial sovereignty. And there were all these cool iterations on that I was like, yes, this is exactly for me. And now we have entire sectors where I'm like, this this is so far removed from, you know, what I have incorporated into my life. And it's really cool to actually see that, because it's catering to all kinds of niches and is really showing how mainstream this technology is becoming, which is very interesting. But Zach, I'm going to throw it back to you to wrap up the show.
All right. I really wanted to make like a cauliflower ear NFT joke, but I don't think that would be in good taste. So I'm not going to do that. But I am going to wrap it here for the Thursday show. It was kind of a fun show. I thought it was a good show today. And it's not even Friday. We got a Friday show tomorrow. Watch out. Anyway, that's the hash. We talk about crypto news and stuff. And, you know, we try to have a fun time,
So,
I guess.
just a quick note, Control. So I know you wanted to stop us with fisticuffs. Now, so DB says in the chat, this show makes me so happy. Danny says, Control, this is entertaining. You know, someone said they feel like I should love FC.
Danny should take control.
Chat. Woo!
Yeah.
Love that.
More fisticuffs, guys. More fisticuffs. Someone said that I should love at UFC because they feel like I could throw down. It's like only when it's against government. That's the only throwdown I'm interested in entertaining.
All right, we're gonna pitch that to the UFC. Naomi versus global leaders. It's gonna be sweet. Check it out next time.
It's a dangerous.
It's gonna be fun. All right, that's the hash. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Zach. We got Will, Naomi, Jen's here. Go read some CoinDesk and go watch some CoinDesk TV. We're here for you. Thanks, chat. Good stuff.
Bye.